Hi folks, it's Ryan Burns, and in this video I'll be doing a suspect profile on one of the more notable Cooper suspects, this being Robert Rackstraw. I'll look into his background and the FBI's investigation into him, and then I'll finish up with my own personal analysis of him as a Cooper suspect.
We don't know who he was, where he came from, or where he went.
Possessing a criminal mindset from an early age, Robert Rackstraw was convicted on 2 separate occasions for burglary before he was even 15 years old. These crimes could not simply be written off as the actions of a rebellious youth, but rather they were the foreshadowing of a pattern of behavior that would follow Rackstraw well into adulthood. Demonstrating a sociopathic lack of empathy for others throughout his life, his sister described him as a person with no moral compass. Before his teenage years were over, he would impregnate 2 girlfriends and commit multiple crimes, including theft, arson, fraud, and assault. However, his criminal activities took a temporary hiatus when he found a home in the military, joining the Army in 1964. Starting out in the infantry, Rackstraw excelled in special operations training, including parachuting and demolitions. Although he claimed throughout his life to have been a member of the Green Berets, this was later revealed to be one of the many falsehoods that permeated around the man. Indeed, Rackstraw was so adept at forging documents, inventing fictions, and conning others into believing his lies that even to this day it can be difficult to separate the truth from his many contrivances. The Army itself even fell for one of his cons, at least for a while. However, one aspect of his life that cannot be denied was his personal bravery and his skill as a pilot. In 1969, Rackstraw graduated from advanced flight training and became a helicopter pilot. He was then sent to Southeast Asia, where he mainly worked as a pilot mechanic, assisting in restorative efforts on choppers that had been damaged by enemy fire. But being stationed in the rear with the gear didn't suit Rackstraw's desire to be in the thick of the fighting. Without orders, Rackstraw waged his own war against the North Vietnamese, often taking these restored choppers into the field of battle in search of enemy positions that he could destroy. In March 1970, he received a Distinguished Flying Cross, the highest aviation award, for going beyond the call of duty. The next month, he received a Silver Star for evacuating wounded American soldiers from a fire base that was being overrun by Viet Cong forces. Despite these heroics, his promising military career came to a crashing halt in June 1971 when his habitual lying finally caught up to him. An unknown catalyst had caused military investigators to begin an inquiry into Rackstraw's record, particularly his claims to have attended the University of Southern California. Of course, Rackstraw had never obtained a high school degree, much less a college degree. As punishment for his deceptions, he was forced to resign his commission as a first lieutenant and was drummed out of the military for good. In 1975, Rackstraw was involved in the theft of nearly half a ton of dynamite from a rock quarry near Santa Cruz, California. When the explosives were eventually found in his effects in January 1978, local police also discovered 25 rifles and handguns and thousands of rounds of ammunition. Then, later on in 1978, he was charged with the murder of his stepfather, Philip Rackstraw, whose body was found shot to death in a shallow grave not far from a shed on Philip's property in Valley Springs, California. Following Philip's death, Rackstraw made himself sparse in America, finding employment as a chopper pilot in Iran, where the feds would eventually find him and extradite him back to California. While being transported from Iran, he brought up the topic of the Cooper hijacking to an FBI agent on the flight and bragged that he could have pulled it off. He even claimed that he had been interviewed by an FBI agent in 1971 as a Cooper suspect, which was false. There aren't any FBI records on Rackstraw before 1978, at least in the Cooper files. If you've been keeping up, this does indeed mean that Rackstraw made himself a Cooper suspect. Regardless of how he came to their attention, it's clear why Rackstraw was such an intriguing suspect. For starters, he seemed remarkably similar in many ways to Cooper's most notable copycat hijacker, Richard Floyd McCoy Jr. Both men were military-trained parachutists, had Special Forces training, and held pilot's licenses for helicopters and small aircraft. Though several characteristics of Rackstraw's personality seemed to match up with what agents were looking for in their ideal suspect, they immediately made note of Rackstraw's most serious flaw. The FBI believed that Cooper was approximately 48 years old, yet Rackstraw was just 28 years old at the time of the hijacking. A 20-year age discrepancy was a tough pill for the agents to swallow. Investigating his whereabouts in November 1971, agents tracked down his ex-girlfriend. She related several facts that damaged Rackstraw's candidacy, such as her memory that he had a full mustache throughout the winter of that year and did not shave it off at any time. There were also no indications that he had come into any sizable wealth at that time, with Rackstraw even taking a second job working at a Radio Shack in 1972. What eventually eliminated Rackstraw in March 1979 was the result of a lengthy process that began the previous spring. In April and May 1978, while in custody awaiting his murder trial, Rackstraw rejected multiple requests from the FBI to provide his palm prints to them. These were to be compared to the palm print obtained from Cooper's seat, which the FBI firmly believed came from the hijacker. Frustrated by Rackstraw's refusal, the FBI even contacted the U.S. Attorney's Office to see if there was any way to legally obtain his palm print by force while he was in custody. But before the U.S. attorneys could provide them with an answer of whether they could hold Rackstraw down and make him give a palm print, the issue became moot once Rackstraw beat the murder charge and was released. It's unclear to this day why he was acquitted, as it was believed at the time, and is still believed among many people in the know, that he did indeed murder his stepfather. As a curiosity, I'll point out that in much of the footage and photos from his trial, he is in a wheelchair. He apparently decided to fake a debilitating back injury for whatever reason so he could be rolled around the courtroom and the jail. That's just the kind of guy he was. A few months after his acquittal, Rackstraw was yet again back in custody, this time in Fullerton, California, for attempting to have copies made of a forged federal pilot's license. Curiously, despite his previous resistance, Rackstraw freely provided his palm prints to the Fullerton Police Department, who then promptly forwarded them to the FBI. Quickly comparing Rackstraw's palm print to the Cooper palm print, the crime lab determined that Rackstraw's print was no match. Fully convinced that he had no connection to the hijacking whatsoever, case agents ceased their investigation into Rackstraw in the spring of 1979. So let's now talk about him as a suspect. While he definitely had the skills to pull off the heist, I'm going to just say that there is no way that Robert Rackstraw was D.B. Cooper. For starters, when the hijacking occurred, he was just 28 years old. The gate agent who took Cooper's ticket, Hal Williams, was 39 years old. He had already been giving Cooper a bit of a stink eye in the boarding area before finally coming face to face with the man as the passengers began to board. While the hijacking was still in progress, he was interviewed by the FBI, and he estimated Cooper to be about 50 years old. Just try to imagine coming face to face with someone and thinking that they were 11 years older than you, but they were actually 11 years younger than you. Then we have the stewardesses who interacted the most with Cooper, estimating his age to be in the mid-40s. These were young ladies in their early 20s, which meant that they believed Cooper to be from their parents' generation. Rackstraw apologists can claim that he was wearing old man makeup or something like that, but come on, really? And as a matter of fact, we do have the stewardesses saying that Cooper was not wearing any makeup at all. Another feature of Cooper's that was pretty universally described by the witnesses was his skin tone. He was described as olive, swarthy, or with a dark complexion. One stewardess and a passenger even thought he could be Latino. Do we see any of that with Rackstraw? Absolutely not. He's about as fair-skinned as I am. In fact, when we see him with a beard, I would say it almost borders on reddish-colored. And finally, the FBI's investigative files indicate that Cooper was not an attractive individual, with two stewardesses describing him as homely, which is a polite way of saying ugly. Rackstraw certainly doesn't look like an ugly guy to me. In this photo from just a few months before the hijacking, he's looking pretty suave with his hair and sideburns. Given Rackstraw's lengthy history of outlandish crimes, it's not unbelievable for him to have pulled off the Cooper heist. But ultimately, he's just too terrible of a physical match to be taken seriously. That age difference is massive. You cannot write it off. Plus he has lily-white skin, and he was a pretty handsome guy. I think the coup de grace for Rackstraw came during a 2016 History Channel documentary that was ironically promoting Rackstraw as Cooper. Tina Mucklow, the stewardess who spent 5 hours around Cooper, looked at photos of Rackstraw and watched videos of him, and she said it wasn't Cooper.
I don't think so.
Also, in my opinion, the way that Rackstraw liked to tease that he could have been D.B. Cooper is the surest sign that he was not D.B. Cooper. He only behaved that way because it was safe to do so. He knew that he wasn't Cooper, and so what's the harm in playing around?
Are you D.B. Cooper? I can't talk about things like that. I can't talk about any of that sort of thing.
I think the man who actually pulled off the Cooper hijacking, or anyone else who committed a capital crime, wouldn't be acting so cavalier when they are asked about it. And I'll end with this. The book that Thomas Colbert wrote about Rackstraw is called The Last Master Outlaw. I would love to know why he didn't call it The Last Master Criminal, playing off of Walter Cronkite's words about D.B. Cooper.
Today, after hijacking a Northwest Airlines jet, ransoming the passengers in Seattle, then making a getaway by parachute somewhere between there and Reno, Nevada, the description on one wire service, master criminal.
I don't know. That's just something that's always bugged me ever since the book came out. I just don't like that title. I mean, that's such a layup, isn't it? The Last Master Criminal? Duh. Anyways, that's all I've got for today, folks. Rackstraw was not Cooper. So like and subscribe and all that YouTubey stuff, and I will talk to you guys again soon.